Organized extortion has a long history in South Africa. In Johannesburg in the 1940s and 1950s, groups such as Mafia, operating out of New Clare, and the Masomi gang in Alexandra were involved in extorting residents. More recently, and particularly in the last decade, extortion has increased significantly throughout Gauteng, and the number of criminal groups involved in the practice has mushroomed. Extortion now affects a significant number of people and economic sectors in the province. Two types of organized crime are prevalent in Gauteng's construction sector. The first is anti-competitive behavior such as price fixing, market allocation, or collusive bidding and tendering. The second one is the rampant extortion perpetrated by what has become known as the construction mafia. This activity surfaced in Gauteng in 2017-18, when criminal groups operating in the province began to emulate the methods of extortionists in KwaZulu-Natal's construction sector. Extortion in South Africa's construction industry is usually carried out by euphemistically named business forums, criminal networks that use the threat of violence to gain access to or control over construction sites, or a share in construction projects. The first reported instances of this type of extortion in Gauteng occurred in Pretoria in mid-2018, when at least two business forums invaded sites in the suburbs of Arcadia, Menlo Park and Brooklyn in the east of the city. From there, the activity spread to other parts of the province, and by the end of the year, the problem had become entrenched. The construction extortion mafia is brazen in its approach, targeting both government and private development. In September 2023, the then Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development, Lebo Mile, revealed that over the previous 5 years at least 8 public health construction sites, worth more than 2.5 billion rand, had been disrupted by this type of criminal activity. In some cases, contractors had been forced to abandon projects altogether. These included Randfontein Clinic, Philip Moyo Clinic in Etwatwa, Benoni, where disruptions cost 52 million rand. Ersteris Clinic in Pretoria, where disruptions cost 64 million rand. The contractor abandoned the site. Dr. George Mukari Hospital in Garankuwa, Jubilee Hospital in Hammanskraal, the Kopanong Hospital in Vereeniging, Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital in Soweto, and Anglo Ashanti Hospital in Carltonville, which lost 589 million rand. Extortion in the Gauteng construction sector has followed a similar trajectory to that in KwaZulu-Natal. In most cases, armed groups calling themselves local business forums invade construction sites and demand a share in the project. This may involve the developer paying a sum of money to the group, or the main contractor agreeing to employ or subcontract work to members of the business forum. The groups may also submit highly inflated quotations for the supply of building materials. In some cases, once developers and contractors have agreed to the demands of one business forum, they are repeatedly approached by other groups, each claiming to be the genuine business forum and each demanding a similar stake. The groups that invade construction sites are usually heavily armed and prepared to intimidate workers and management to ensure that their demands are met. Many companies are reluctant to take action against extortionists, seeing it as an expensive and ultimately pointless exercise. There have been at least 2 assassinations linked to the construction extortion mafia in Gauteng. The first was Rand Water executive Teboho Joala and his bodyguard, Sifiso Shange, who were fatally shot at a school function in Johannesburg in January 2024. The second was prominent Alexandra-based businessperson Mfo Matsumi, who was gunned down in February. On the 22nd of January 2024, Rand Water executive Teboho Joala was gunned down while attending a back-to-school event in Zakaria Park, south of Johannesburg. Joala was handing over school uniforms and shoes to a group of children, and was killed in full view of a large crowd. In video footage of the incident, a gunman wearing a striped t-shirt enters the hall where learners and parents are gathered and sits down among the attendees. When Joala stands up to speak, the gunman calmly walks towards him and shoots him 8 times, killing him and wounding several others. One of Joala's bodyguards, Sifiso Shange, was killed by another gunman outside the hall. The gunman then fled the scene in a getaway vehicle. Joala had joined Rand Water in 2019 as General Manager for Communications and Stakeholder Management and was appointed Chief Shared Services Officer in July 2021. In this position, he was responsible for the procurement processes of several Rand Water projects. 3 suspects were arrested for the shooting and appeared in court on the 22nd of April 2024. They were charged with 2 counts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. The case is ongoing. Alexandra Township is no stranger to extortion. In the 1950s, powerful gangs such as the Spoilers and the Masomis, named after notorious KwaZulu-Natal serial murderer Elifasi Masomi, the Axe Killer, roamed the streets demanding protection money from shopkeepers, taxi operators, and even ordinary wage earners. During this time, the township developed the nickname Gomorrah, after the notoriously sinful Old Testament cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. More recently, particularly since the COVID-19 lockdown, the township has seen a resurgence of extortion, with township gangs and criminal groups even targeting businesses in neighboring areas such as Norwood, Kelvin, Balfour Park, Sandringham, Bramley, Lyndhurst, Kramerville, and Woodmead. While the number of small gangs involved in extortion in Alexandra has soared, many of those involved are known criminals with links to larger, more powerful gangs, some of which operate out of the densely populated and under-resourced Madala and Nobuli hostels. Some of these smaller gangs are also involved in carrying out hijackings and robberies on behalf of the more powerful gangs and criminal networks operating out of Alexandra. In addition to extortion gangs, Alexandra is also home to so-called civic movements, such as the Dudula Movement, an anti-illegal immigration organization. These purport to be driven by the burden placed on public health services, job opportunities and social grants due to an influx of illegal immigrants. In reality, these groups are widely recognized as being xenophobic and have been involved in the extortion of foreign nationals as well as South Africans, either because they look foreign or simply because they possess something the groups want. A series of high-profile murders brought into sharp focus the extent and impact of extortion in townships such as Mamelodi and Soshanguve in Tshwane. In 2022 and 2023, brothers and businesspeople Kevin, Ivan, and Mandla Shaba were murdered after refusing to pay protection money. In June 2024, 2 sisters, Tinyiko and Mfumo Mashaba, aged 7 and 4, were shot and then burnt to death at their home in Soshanguve by a man thought to be looking for their father, who had recently distanced himself from an extortion group. In October 2022, Ivan and Mandla Shaba were shot and killed in front of their elderly mother, who reportedly suffered a stroke and died soon afterwards. Just under a year later, in September 2023, Kevin Shaba was killed in a hail of bullets in Mamelodi, in what appeared to be a targeted hit. The 3 brothers owned a brickmaking and plastering company, and were being extorted by the notorious Boko Haram gang, not to be confused with the Nigerian one, who are alleged to be responsible for their deaths. An unnamed businessperson from the area said Ivan and Mandla had moved out of Mamelodi because of gang threats. They were warned to stop operating in the area or to make way for someone who was willing to pay. They resisted and they were killed. According to reports, Kevin Shaba had still been operating the business at the time of his killing and was a key witness in his brother's murder case. The Boko Haram gang in Mamelodi has its roots in a community initiative for local entrepreneurs and unemployed youth, but has evolved into a criminal organization specializing in extortion. The group was initially supported by local residents, who hoped it would help facilitate job placements and opportunities. However, as one resident put it, the road to perdition is paved with good intentions. Soon the group morphed into a bunch of gangsters who terrorized foreign-owned spaza shops, local businesses, taxi drivers, construction companies, and the community of Mamelodi in general. All this in pursuit of what the group calls protection fees. As was the case in Alexandra, following the 2014 xenophobic attacks in Mamelodi, Boko Haram saw an opportunity to extort money from foreign-owned spaza shops. The gang promised foreign nationals that they would be protected from violence if they paid a fee. However, according to a foreign spaza shop owner, this was a fallacy, as Boko Haram had actually encouraged residents to loot foreign-owned spaza shops during the xenophobic mania. The shop owner said he and his fellow foreign shop owners were forced to pay the gang between 400 to 500 rand a month for so-called protection. As in other examples of township enterprise extortion, Boko Haram soon progressed from the extortion of foreign-owned businesses to include all commercial ventures, including those owned by South Africans living and working in Mamelodi. Inevitably, the gang has also expanded its operations to include illegal drugs, hijacking, and robbery. Between 2017 and 2019, Boko Haram was involved in the illegal occupation of a Mamelodi West hostel, where they sold the street drug nyaupa, a mixture of low-grade heroin and other substances, and demanded rent from residents. 2 gang members were subsequently arrested in March 2019 and charged with trespassing, money laundering, extortion, and drug dealing. According to police, Boko Haram had cost the city of Swani, which owns the building, more than 11 million rand in unpaid rent over 2 years. Similarly, in 2019, Boko Haram moved into an unlawfully occupied block of government-owned flats in Mamelodi East. Armed gang members threatened residents who did not speak Mamelodi lingo with eviction or fines, and forced others to pay fees for security, services, and rent. They even began selling the vacated properties to new tenants, and by 2023 were selling flats for 15,000 rand or more. While Boko Haram is one of the most feared gangs in Mamelodi, it is far from unique. Criminal groups such as Bafarasai 86 and Al-Qaeda 87 are also active in the township, and clashes between rivals are common. In 2018, for example, Boko Haram's construction extortion mafia were involved in running gun battles with other criminal groups over subcontracts to renovate the Mams Mall shopping complex in the east of Mamelodi. In 2021, Boko Haram itself became the target of a series of gang-related killings, in which 9 people were murdered, including one of the gang's key leaders, Philip Given Mnguni. At the time, many residents were adamant that the deaths were the work of a lone vigilante nicknamed John Wick. However, the police and commentators attributed the killings to a breakaway gang known as Bafarasai, comprising local unemployed youth. Many of the members of Bafarasai are said to be former victims of Boko Haram, seeking revenge as well as control of Mamelodi's extensive extortion economy. Last year in May 2023, a gang turf war broke out in the area, resulting in the brutal deaths of 4 Boko Haram members. Eddie Manguni, chairperson of the Mamelodi East Community Policing Forum, said, "When he arrived at the scene, it looked like a massacre had happened. And from what they heard, after the suspects shot the Boko Haram members, they further went on to smash their heads, almost to ensure that none of them survived." Police described the attacks as an onslaught on Boko Haram, as groups vied for control of the highly lucrative extortion economy. It is an economy, after all, in which gang members can reportedly earn as much as 700,000 rand a month. In several areas of Gauteng, criminal gangs have become embedded in the taxi industry. Gang members use their power and influence to extort money from rival taxi operators, and some have even risen to positions of prominence in local taxi associations. Perhaps one of the most notorious examples is the well-known Mamelodi taxi boss and gang leader Vusi Khekhe Matibela, who, before his conviction in 2023 for the murder of businessperson Wandile Bozwana, was responsible for running a vast extortion ring in the township, targeting both businesses and taxi operators. Vusi Matibela started out in the taxi industry when he left school, having been given 2 taxis by his grandmother. His business consisted of around 50 taxis, a nightclub in Pretoria, and shares in a Johannesburg restaurant. At the time of his arrest in 2016, he was the chairperson of the Mamelodi Amalgamated Taxi Association. Described as Mamelodi's Al Capone and Mamelodi's #1 Tsotsi, Vusi Khekhe was alleged to run an extensive extortion ring, demanding protection money from dozens of businesses and taxi owners in Mamelodi. Although he reportedly lived in the upscale suburb of Midrand, he occasionally visited the township in a convoy of more than 15 cars and over 30 bodyguards. In March 2019, several residents called into a local radio station to publicly express what a feared figure Matibela was. In 2019, Vusi Khekhe handed himself over to police for the 2015 murder of businessperson Wandile Bozwana, after being implicated by his co-accused. He was released on bail and prohibited from leaving the country, although he holidayed in Mauritius during this time, and was ultimately re-arrested at Or Tambo Airport while on his way to Dubai in 2019, his bail revoked. In January 2023, Vusi, along with his co-accused, were sentenced to 30 years imprisonment for Bozwana's murder, 10 years for the attempted murder of his business partner Mpo Baloyi, 6 years for the unlawful possession of a firearm, and 2 years each for the unlawful possession of ammunition.